Because I'm one of those neurotic people that put a scale next to my Rialta and weighed everything I put in. And then I still go to the cast scale and weigh. So I know what I weigh. But my question is there any success doing anything to be able to add even a few hundred pounds, 200 extra pounds, anything to the rear axle?
No.
Technically, no.
No, okay.
But
I'd love to carry maybe an extra couple of hundred pounds.
The limit that Winnebago puts on there, you know there's a safety factor built in, but they're not gonna tell you what it is because they don't want people to push it.
Right.
I suspect it's about 10%, which would be 700 pounds total that you could add. But
So a third spring wouldn't
technically
work?
and legally, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm over here.
Yeah, what I did, I put an extra leaf spring in our first Rialta.
Yeah.
I added an extra leaf spring. I do know, there's a company in Austin called Atlas Spring and Axle. They've done 7 Rialtas that I know about.
What was the name of that again?
Atlas Spring and Axle. They're on East 6th Street in Austin. They've done 7 that I know about, and you've talked to them.
I've talked to them. The company I use up in New Hampshire, I use Donovan Spring in Londonderry, New Hampshire. And they added a third leaf spring to mine, did a good job. Changed all the hardware at the same time.
So why would you add a third leaf?
Well, first of all, I got tired of messing with the darn airbags because we can bear it.
Right.
And it improved our handling unbelievably.
Dramatic improvement.
Dramatic
It's
improvement. It's
not as
almost like
bouncy as airbag.
Yeah.
It'll keep it from bottoming out.
It's
You
almost
have to
like,
be a little over.
it's almost like driving our van, or Dodge van.
Drives like a Volkswagen slightly.
In fact, I know one rig, they had to put 2 leaves on each side. He called me, he says, we took the air out of the bags and it went straight to the axle. So that's an option.
Remove the airbags if you
I
do the
did.
extra leaf?
I left mine
You
in.
can or
Can or can't?
Either way.
It's your choice.
Yeah, I've left mine in, and it gives me the ability, if I'm carrying 9 people that go to a music show, which we do quite a bit, it's all in the back.
Right.
I've got 2 35s in the back. I went extreme. But there are things you can do to add the weight. The limiting factor on mine right now is the actual spindle. There's a cast spindle that is, I wouldn't say it's poorly designed, but it's right at its design limit. And I've done pretty much everything. I got a tube steel on the axle to keep it from bending. I went to bigger tires. I put the third leaf in. I added some actual 2-inch tube on the main rails when I was doing some rust. I've got about $8 grand into rust work on mine because we use ours in the winter in New Hampshire and salt. So I've done a fair amount of modifications on mine. The last thing that I need to do is to put some gussets on those spindles. And I can't find a welder in New Hampshire to do it, and nobody's willing to touch it at this point.
Question. That cast spindle, is that cast steel?
It's cast steel. There's a specification sheet that I found someplace. I don't know if
It's on the Rialta Tech route.
But it is a cast steel.
It's cast steel, and the way that you have to weld it, it's got to be preheated at a certain rate, and then you do the welding, and it's got to be cooled down at a certain rate. It's a very complicated process.
Well, cast iron, and we use a nickel rod, and then we're stick welding with that.
So there's recommended ways to do it. I do welding, but it's not something I'm going to do myself.
And that's still something I would do. I'm a metal fabricator.
Oh, okay, well.
So it's something that I
Fabricator,
would do.
that's a serious word. You're gonna have work done, you need a fabricator. I've got a guy that builds race cars and he does the work on my rig.
And the purpose of that is to strengthen.
Absolutely.
To reinforce,
Reinforce.
there's a couple of webs in there that are not adequate for the loads that we put on them.
And that's sort of the weak point if you're overloaded.
The rear axles were built by one of 2 companies. One of them was Dexter, I don't remember the other one. But Winnebago had all the parts made, and then his company put it all together. And so the tube on the back, the axle tube itself, is just across there. On the end of it is what I call the spindle, and it's welded onto the tube, and it's kind of like that. And up here is where the wheel bearing's at. So that in between
Takes all the stress.
Takes all the stress, yeah, I would see that.
Yet, it was a bad design, because where that goes up, they had to cut notches in the side to get to the mulch for the
the
brake
bolts.
caliper.
And that makes it weaker.
Yeah. And so people have got the gusset plates, and they basically go along there, just inside of that, and goes along that and down to the tube to help reinforce it, keep it steady and stuff.
And there are pictures on the Rialta website about that, showing the details.
So less about the axle, but more about how the axle attaches.
The spindle itself is the weakest point at that point.
On mine, on the dash there, it's got a gauge, and you got buttons where you can inflate either bag right or left separately. And
Somebody added
That's
on.
after.
yeah, that was my question, is that an add-on or was that
It's all
a?
aftermarket.
From the factory, you've got the bags, right under,
Yeah.
right underneath the edge.
That's
you've
on
got
there
a
too.
trailer valve.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's on there too, but this other thing, I didn't know whether that was an add-on or.
It had to be.
Got to dream big, or don't dream at all.